Another scenario that Susan brought up yesterday is she has a card in her hand of a buyer looking for flip opportunities, properties that could be a good flip. And so she was thinking or wondering, how can she go and find those? And I thought that would be a good, let's just brainstorm and mastermind a little bit, like big picture. And then I'll also dive into LeadDeck and sort of detail how I would approach it with that. So you've got somebody who's looking for a flip. What would be the steps that you would take, or what would be strategies you might employ to find them a deal? Nobody? Well, number one, I would start with the MLS, and she might have already done that, but you never know. I've
Gosh,
closed a number of
expired.
transactions. Sorry, who was that?
I'm sorry, it's Doreen's.
So I would start with the actives, and then absolutely, I would look at expired and cancel. And it doesn't take you don't need a big bucket of them. And don't decide for the seller. Meaning, in the last few months, I've had several transactions that the listing agent pretty much told me, no way that's going to fly. And it flew. Because a lot of times the listing agents don't actually know the level of motivation or what the motivation of the seller is. So you got to take your shot. We have closed several transactions where we've gotten a discount of 15, 25, 30% off of the current list price. You never know unless you ask. Take your shot. So active and expired is where I would go first because it's openly inventory available. I would take a quick peek at for sale by owners. Are there any fixer-upper for sale by owners? There was an example I had a couple of weeks ago. I reached out to a for sale by owner. It was clearly a fixer-upper from the Zillow photos. They were asking 165. In one question, they dropped down to 110 or 115. Dropped 45 or 50,000 just by asking, what do you think is the best you could do? Like if I brought you a cash offer as is and we closed in 2 weeks, where do you think? Like that was not even pushing hard. If I brought them 100 and closed in 2 weeks, I don't know, maybe. Terrell.
So one of the things that I tell my students, the people that are getting ready, because I teach the pre-licensing courses for the state of California, is that one of the hardest things in this business is not overlaying our own expectations on our clients. And this is what you were saying, is that we barely know our own backstory. So how in God's green earth are we going to know somebody else's backstory and what the magic's going to be? Because moment to moment, things change.
I was just going to say, you may have listed this property 60 days ago. And at that point, this was their life situation. And something may have happened last month, last week, or last night. And they're like, we're done with this.
Yep.
But the next offer that is even remotely reasonable, we're ready to be gone. And we're done.
Pays off the mortgage and fees, we're done.
Gone. Wendy that I was talking to, I am fairly confident if we get an offer that just makes him whole, he's done. Good. And when I first started talking to him, that number would have been 50,000 more. Now that's also the one that the pipes froze, is vacant and the pipes froze and whatever. So like some things have happened since then. But point is, that's happening on listings all over your town right now. You just don't know. So don't assume. Your job is to facilitate and negotiate. That's it. I consume a lot of content from wholesalers. A phrase that I hear from a guy that I really like in our business when he's talking with a seller that is relevant here. I can only tell you what we can pay for your property. I'm not telling you what you should sell it for. And so I'm not saying that you should accept this offer. All I'm telling you is this is an offer we have in hand. Ultimately, it's your decision. This doc, I haven't referenced this in a while, but this document has a whole bunch of ideas as well, including one of the ideas that I thought is relevant for this conversation, which Susan, looking for the wholesalers in your market that have inventory, and you can find them in Facebook groups. You can find them on InvestorLift. You can find or potentially find off-market inventory. In fact, I'm curious if there is any in Hamilton County. You could also use the flipper target in LeadDeck. So where I'm going next is I'm going to get more specific into how I would.
Ohio.
Yeah, why is it doing? Oh, Hamilton
Indiana.
County. Why is it not?
Those are just cities. It's not putting counties. It's not giving you counties. Yeah, there you go.
So there may or may not be any on here, but I'll relate this back to something I had shared a couple of weeks ago. Earmarking a day a week to spend a little bit of time connecting with the wholesalers, the professional home buyers, et cetera, that are in your market, not the institutional buyers that you get with fast cash offers, and different from the cash buyers in LeadDeck, like the pros, and just establishing a relationship with them, because just like listing agents that have a lot of inventory, the pros in your market, they get to like dispositioning a property, which is listing a property, like it requires work. Now, if it's a good enough deal, usually it's easier, but like you still have to do the work. And there are lots of wholesalers or that type of home buyer that are really good at getting the deal, but not great at selling the deal. And if you can be a solution in those scenarios, you might be able to pick up a couple of extra transactions a year just from one relationship. So it's worth exploring. Well, actually, before I even get to the seller targets, let's look at, where was this fella looking for deals?
He's also in Noblesville.
Wow, that's a lot. For those that are curious, these targets, these flipper targets, it's usually one of three things. It is wholesalers that are doing double close. So they're buying it and selling it the same day and making the spread. So instead of assigning it, they lock it up for 100 and they assign it for a fee of 10 or 20 or 25,000. They want to try and hide how much they're making on the deal. They'll do a double closing. It is also people that buy it, maybe just clean it out and put it back on the market 2 weeks, a month later, and they're trying to make a spread. And it is also the ones that are doing the full renovations. They buy it, they fully renovate it, and they sell it back on the market. In other words, they are companies or individuals who bought and sold the same property in the last 12-month window in Noblesville. That's a lot. You might set a goal, Susan, of reaching out to 5 of these a day until you exhaust that list. CJ's script for these folks is a laugh because it just makes me smile, but it's, hey, Terrell, this is Josh with eXp Realty. Are you still in the real estate game? And they just start talking. Much like the other active buyer sets in here, these folks are more predisposed to talk on the phone because they have been conditioned that phone conversations equals money. Most business people, not all, but most, understand, especially in a high dollar transaction like real estate is, that phone conversations equal money. So I would check with them and you'd be using the no tree. Do you have any inventory right now that you're looking to sell? Are you looking to buy right now? I guess with them, that would be the main, because we wouldn't necessarily be reaching out to the flippers about a specific property, although you might, because part of the AI search will pull back data. You might find that they have a website where they put their off-market deals or something along those lines. But I would go, do you have any off-market inventory you're looking to sell right now, or you need help selling right now? And are you looking to buy, right? So you can be adding people to one of two hands there. Noblesville, what would you say, Susan, max value? If I was going to flip a property, what would my max AVM value, right? Because the AVM is going to assume a renovated property.
It's about 400 to 450.
So I'm just going to go max 450. And we've got single family. Do you have a sense of if he would be, if like older properties would be a deal breaker, or?
He wanted after 1950, but I'm sure if it was a good deal, he'd go.
Well, we'll start here. And I'm going to leave the bedrooms open because if he's looking to flip or value add, there might be, if you get a good enough deal, you can add a bedroom, you can do, you can get kind of creative there. So let's just see what we have with this. 97 tired, 162 out of state, a lot of involuntary liens. You may have already done this, but immediately where I would go is I would stack out of state with involuntary, and that's 13. And I would absolutely call, text, email, and direct mail those. I would start there. Then I would go, I might stack out of state, free and clear. Wow. Out of state, free and clear is 56. Where would I go next? I would probably, I don't know, I might go inherited involuntary lien, 24. That's a pretty good audience. There's only 6 tax default. I don't know why that is. Seems odd. I'd hit up the 6 tax default. I mean, that's a small list. We stacked inherited. Okay, so here's where I would go. I'd go out of state stacked with involuntary. I'd go out of state stacked with free and clear. I'd go inherited stacked with involuntary, and then I'd hit up vacant and the rest of the inherited. That's going to get you a total of probably 100 to 150. When you take into account that as you add them to decks, they won't show up as you ladder your way up. If they were caught in a lower deck, they won't show up again. So you're going to have, those numbers are going to be lower as you work your way up than the projected, because they'll have already shown up in another deck. And the communication I would send would be our standard message. Hi, Susan, this is Josh with eXp Realty. Is there any chance you'd consider selling your property at street address to a private client of mine this winter or spring? I wouldn't bring up that they're looking for a flip and that they're a cash buyer, et cetera, because that then creates a assumption, or they will create a picture in their brain of what they think this looks like. And you can pivot any number of ways because you have this person that is looking for flips. You also have institutional buyers that you can run anybody that says a yes to against. And you likely have retail buyers in Noblesville, in your Bold Trail or somewhere that might be interested if it was retail type property. So you have any number of ways that you can pivot once they say yes. And you're looking for a needle in a haystack for that specific client. It doesn't mean you can't find that for them. It just means you are much more likely to uncover loads more opportunity for yourself before you actually find him the thing he wants. So we go on the hunt for the thing he wants, and in that pursuit, you will uncover a whole bunch more gold or potential gold in that pursuit. And then eventually, sooner than later, you find what might best fit he's looking for. Or you never know. Tomorrow you reach out and you find, there may be a wholesaler in your market right now that just has one that it's not been a high priority for them to dispo, and you never know. But until you take the shots, we just don't know what may happen. Questions from Susan or anyone related to that before?
Yeah, I only have one question because I've sent out that, is there any chance? And you talk about semantics. I always want to change that. Would you consider selling? Does it
Go
matter?
ahead. Yeah,
taking a
I've
chance,
used both of those have worked.
Okay.
Both of those have worked. I'm glad you're bringing this up, okay? Because the ingredients are as follows: personalized, their specific property street address, and a question. Would you be totally opposed to receiving an offer on your property at street address? Would you be interested, or would you consider selling your property at street address? Is there any chance you'd consider selling? All of those work. That would be an example of whatever you feel best fits your vernacular. That's not going to be drastically impacting the replies either way. What will is if it's too generic otherwise. If you just said, I'm just going to go the extreme other side. If I send a message, hi, this is Josh with eXp Realty. Would you consider selling your property to a private client of mine? Question mark. If you sent enough of those, someone might reply. But if I say, hi, Susan, this is Josh with eXp Realty. Is there any chance, or what was your phrase that you wanted to use?
Would you consider selling?
Would you consider selling your property at street address to a private client of mine in the next 30 to 90 days? The non-negotiables are personalization of name and property address and asking a direct question. How you frame that question, there's probably 5 variations that all work. Use what feels right to you. And also, if you do 100 and you think, I wonder what would happen if I try a different variation of this for the next 100. But where we maybe make mistakes is we do 5 and then we do another one. And then we do 10 of that and then we switch it again. And then we do 15 of that one and then we switch it again. Pick what feels right and comfortable and make it as specific and relevant as possible. Except in this case, I would not include he's a flipper and he's looking for a deal, right? But if it were a retail buyer, the example yesterday that I was using, she's looking for a 4-bedroom in this school district, and we just haven't found what she's looking for yet. Like, that doesn't scream like looking for a deal, whatever. So use discretion with that part of it. But as long as you have the personalization and the direct question, I think you're good to use whatever feels most like your communication style, I guess, or vernacular. Stuart.
Out of state guys, do you ever add in the city as well? I started doing that in case they have stuff all over the country and go, oh crap, where's that one? I mean, they'll probably know what the property address is, but so it's 123 Main Street in McDonough.
Yeah, I could go either way on that. I don't know that would have a drastic, if you've got a guy that's got that many, him asking where is great. So I could go either way on it, but if he doesn't know, then I'm like, I might just call him. If he says which one, that might be an immediate, well, how many you got? Where do you have properties that, so I don't think there's anything hard. Where I think the point of diminishing returns for me is if it's the full address, because then it seems spammy. If it's, hey, Stuart, this is Josh with eXp Realty. Is there any chance you'd consider selling 5805 Fall Meadow Lane in Ole, PA, 17025 USA? Then it's like, bot, spam, right? But 5805 Fall Meadow Lane in Enola, I could go either way on it. It's not going to hurt things.